what we call Kangara, local ice cream that is tiled within the, nylon and so. But because this model as VSLA, as I told you, it gives business skill. So she has that business orientation, and then gradually that small business grew to selling charcoal within the nylon, and then gradually she was selling it within the bag. So from the bag, she went ahead to open a petty trade. Today, as we're speaking, Fatima has a school that she built, someone that hasn't gone to school, and then she brought together the community, have teachers, teaching children within their community. And that didn't stop at that. She used her own altruistic motive to bring orphans within those communities that have no parents to attend that school. So this is the story, one of those effects of impact of VSLA. This lady that wasn't empowered has become empowered and have ripple effect within the community to even educate more children that are not attending school. So basically, this is one of our many stories of how VSLA was able to change a lot of women's life. So why are we talking about women? No, we have men in the VSLA, don't get me wrong, but because it was created mainly as a women economic justice tool, 70 to 80% of our participants or beneficiaries are women. And then care, of course, we focus on women and girls. So these are one of the stories we have to tell about VSLA on impacting women economic empowerment and reducing poverty. But also, this is just the basic. As we're going, you see, Fatima is having a business and all that. We tend not to just leave them having a box, saving within the box and accessing credit. We try as much as possible to link them with formal financial institutions that can give them more money to also expand their business, register them as cooperative, also to expand their access to pool of resources, also register them with, for instance, MEDAN, because they are into business. Sometimes this business could be as an individual or as a group of VSLA. So these are few among many of our impacts through VSLA during our work here.
Interesting, and that's one interesting story, and that's quite fascinating. It's not all VSLA that naturally transit to these very impactful actions that Fatima has taken, but there are a lot that you can tell across how women working really hard, making this contribution is transforming their lives. Not just their individual life, but the lives of their families and their communities, which is ultimately what we actually aims to achieve. Because we recognize, and anyone who is in this sector knows, that you can't transform our societies while the condition of women remain the same. And that's one major issue. Alhaji Nura, I know that Bauchi State is one of the few states in the country that has deliberately invested in the microfinance systems. Can you just share, maybe, because why do we even have that in the first place? Where would the state government set up what they call a sustainable microfinance institution? I think we should start from there.
All right, thank you very much. Well, the story is there, commercial banks are not willing to lend to the poor. Microfinance institutions have their issues, exorbitant interest rates and all that. So in most cases, any attempt, to assist the poor in poverty would be kind of like a difficult situation. The poor are always left at the mercy of money lenders, in the rural communities, who always charge them exorbitant interest rates, extortionary rates, and things like that. So when the government of this present administration, the government of Senator Bala Abdulkadir Mohammed, the executive governor of Bauchi State, came into power, he had the resolve basically to challenge poverty, because It was during the time of the pandemic. You remember the COVID-19, economic restriction and all that. So thousands and millions of people are going into poverty by the day. So that was why His Excellency challenged the Agency for Sustainable Microfinance to come up with a program to see how the poor and vulnerable women and other citizens will be supported. So that was the origin of the establishment of the Microfinance Institution Buildings Program for Poverty Reduction.
And that's very interesting. But how have the agency been working with probably VSLA groups or other forms of savings groups in the state? Do you have any particular programs for them, and how has it been going?
Yeah. Okay, we started working with the VSLAs, that's the Village Savings and Loans Association, when His Excellency again approved the establishment of a non-interest microcredit revolving scheme so that all poor and vulnerable citizens in the state will have access at least to the little capital they need to start up or upscale a business. So, of course, this is part of a wider financial inclusion and economic development agenda of the administration. So in coming up with a framework for the implementation of this scheme, we needed to have a well-structured, system, such as, savings and loans groups, because you just lending, to an unstructured system will be like you're throwing money into an endless river. So we're looking for a model. So we came across the Village Savings and Loan model. We look at the structure, we saw the constitution of the members, they're very organized, they have their regulations, they have their rules and regulations. Faiza has mentioned some of the values they have, like the savings, they do internal lendings, they have internal literacy, all these things just add up and they just conform to what we exactly need and what we're looking for. So we immediately started working to see how we can integrate the VSLA model as a government policy. So right now, we have integrated the VSLA into the microcredit revolving scheme in the sense that one of the qualifying criteria to benefit from the microcredit scheme is that you have to belong to a VSLA, system. And so since then, we have started working on how to upscale the VSLA because right now, they're just in few areas in the state, in few local governments where CARE and other NGOs are intervening and creating them. So we took a role, as a government to upscale the creation of VSLAs across all the 20 local governments of the state. And we're working to see how we can extend training, capacity building, and continuous support for the Village Savings and Loans Associations.
Thank you for it. It is not easy to even make the money that you will contribute. It's just a big struggle for everyone, even particularly so for women in most of our rural communities. You recognize, and I think my elementary economics taught me that savings is a function of income. You can't save when you don't even have enough to feed. How has women weathered this kind of situation, and how do they manage, from your experience and the experience of our communities, how do they manage to feed and stay safe?
Okay. So with the elementary economics term, we call it consumption. So you consume, then you save. If you are still able to have some change, you invest. That's what equates your income. So, but usually these women that come together, most of the time or sometimes, you'll find them maybe engaged in one or two, let me call it micro enterprise first. And where there is none, you have to inject capital to support these women to start saving.
Who injects the capital?
So mostly, it has, from the research we did as CARE, we have found out that the VSLA is mostly created by non-governmental organizations like ourselves. So most of the establishers of the VSLA are non-government, and those are the ones doing the capital injection. So when there is none, I think there's a gap. We haven't
So
checked.
let's get it right. When we inject the capital,
Yes.
does the capital go to the individual woman in the group, or does it go to the group and the individual woman can't draw from what has been injected? Just need.
Okay. So I think that capital injection is even beyond the first stage. But for the first stage, where the women come together to pull the savings, sincerely, I think this is a research gap of where do the women get the income from? Yes, because most of the time we go into the community and say, okay, we are introducing VSLAs to save money, give them the financial literacy. Please, you all have this handout. You see the process. I call it a handout in the publisher. Yeah, you see the process of the VSLA model. This. Oh, I'm talking of this. Yeah. So we just go there. I think we never checked where do women get this money from. Though we recognize that this is a kindergarten for financial inclusion. We expect you not to have like 100,000 or 1,000 naira before you can start saving. As little as 100 naira, depending on what the group decide to be the share. So we actually never thought, where will these women get the extra 100 naira from their income that they're supposed to consume to improve their livelihood? Because that's the first step to even curb poverty, is when you're able to consume and later on move on to having an asset to maintain their lifestyle of consumption before you even be able to save or invest. So this, I think, is a research gap we should look at. Where do you get that money? When we get into the community, where do you get that money? Because we are here to help you. So on the capital injection I was talking of, actually, it's supposed to be the NGOs that do this capital injection, what we call the revolving fund. And now the government, like Alhaji Nora's agency, has adopted that. So we get the revolving fund, deposit it in a microfinance bank, and then we encourage our VSLA groups to access that money as a loan, but on a free interest rate, because one of the challenges our VSLA face is exorbitant and extortion through interest rate. The microfinance bank extort the VSLAs in the name of business with high interest rates. Sometimes it's not their fault. I'm sorry if you're coming from the microfinance bank or commercial bank, but for us, these are our people, and we know that they don't have that capacity to borrow money, for instance, and return at 28% or 30% interest. Because normally in the VSLA group, some are interest-free, and where there's interest, it usually goes from 3% to 5%. So imagine moving, we're trying to do bank linkage, and we take a VSLA to the microfinance bank to borrow money at 30%. I think that's something infeasible. So that capital injection is what support them to borrow money at a free interest rate and then come back and invest them whether in their group business or individual business, depending on the circumstance. So basically that's it, but I'm happy that we find a research gap while this discussion is going.
Yeah, because this is how I approach this thing,
Yeah.
having a critical conversations on some of those things. We're doing well, but we don't celebrate everything. We always think that we should ask ourselves some critical questions and see how we can respond to them. Another critical issue for me, again, Faiza, is, okay, we have these VSLA groups that we've set up. We are supporting. Different other organizations are doing that. World Bank has a fantastic programs on the Nigeria for Women. And for us, what's the end game? When does this group end? What does it transit to? Should they remain forever saving Kobo the CC, or do we want them to become something else? Because the whole discourse of financial inclusion seems to be almost like some people have the right to have heavy bank accounts, own banks, keep billions and trillions, and then some we only have to keep what I call kobo the CC. How does that define inclusion? So what's our end game? What do we want to ultimately achieve with it? Is it that we want to transform women's life so that they just are be able to meet their basic needs without thinking around what they can do probably at a higher or meso level? Generally, what's the conversation like? Can you share this with the audience?
So I'm speaking from the point of care. I know a lot of organizations are doing it, but I'm speaking from our own experience. Yes, we started the VSLA in 1993. 1993 today, 2024 today is not 1993. A lot have changed. And we started this with saving in the box, accessing loan within the box. But we are transiting to go beyond the box. So VSLA, or savings group as you call it, is a kindergarten for financial inclusion. It's an informal financial inclusion service, but that is not the end. It's a beginning. It's a beginning, I don't know to the end. I don't know where the end is because I don't want to start that discussion. But it's a beginning to a particular end or to infinity. I don't know. But what we've been doing is, okay, the VSLA is a concrete model with a guideline. It started a cycle, as we call it, goes from 9 months to 12 months. These women are able to save and access loan. So the loan you access, you bring it back sometimes with interest rate. At the end of the day, the money you are able to save as a group will be much higher than what you've been saving. So there is what we call share out at the end of cycle. So it's either you share the money among yourself, depending on the shares. There is a model, so I don't want to go deep into that. Depending, and then at the end of the day, you take your money and go and invest it or spend it on your family, depending. But we don't want women to continue sitting on the mat and saving. Things are evolving. One. So on the part of financial inclusion, we are gradually introducing digitalization. Because women come together, sit on the mat with their card, tick in, just if you've experienced Adashi, the moment you do your Zubi, they'll tick it on the book and things like that, or on the card. So we don't want it to continue that way. Now, fintechs are developing digital VSLAs, or savings group platform, where these women can, within their comfort zone, send in their money and then are able, to meet on a day and do the regular meeting or do the regular cycle. That is one. Then secondly, we do what we call the bank linkage, because we don't want them, we want them also to access better funds than what they've been saving, like the Kobo and CC. We want them to save, we want them to access thousands. So one, how we do this is through that capital injection I mentioned earlier, which is the revolving fund. Because we are supporting them, we take this money to the bank. They are able to access more money through microfinance at no interest rate, because one of those things that hinder them to go to the bank is because the interest rates are high. But here we have money and then we keep it in the bank where they can access it with no interest rate. And I think a large numerous organization is doing that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We have a lot anyway.
Let me come to Alajinura
Okay.
very quickly before we come into the audience, because I've just been informed that this session will end at 5 minutes past 11, which means that the session has been abbreviated because it was supposed to be an hour.
Yeah.
So, Alajinura, let me ask this very quickly. How has it been in the last 6 years of this agency, if I'm not mistaken? What progress has been made? How have you been able to reach women and our rural communities who actually need this financial inclusion, or deserve actually this financial inclusion? What progress and what are you proud of as the head of this agency?
Okay. Okay, like I've said, the microfinance institution building program looks at the entire microfinance architecture of the state. We look at the issues, from the roots. Then we try to address and bring solutions. So we do not only look at the village savings and loans at the grassroots, we also look at the financial institutions, that is the microfinance institutions that operate, within the state. So what we do is we first of all try to strengthen the microfinance institutions, see what is the real problem, because these institutions are the ones who are supposed to be providing this financial intermediation system, to the economic system of the state. But they don't do that. And some of the problems are lack of capital, lack of capacity, because they are financial institutions themselves operating in rural areas. They themselves do not have the requisite capacity, they are not well trained, they don't have the exposure. So how do we expect them, to be able to save the millions of people down below the ladder, So we look at the microfinance institutions, and we channel our funds, the microcredit revolving funds, through microfinance institutions. Now, look, as a government, we cannot lend directly to the village savings and loans, because if they default, we can't take them to court. How can we take our poor citizens to court? But we can take microfinance institutions to court because they are registered and established institutions. So what we do is we get a number of them to apply for the funds. But as part of the application procedure or request, they will have to submit a list of the village savings and loans associations that they are going to finance. Of course, we will do some checks, monitoring, pre-disbursement evaluation to see whether those groups actually exist, how they are doing consistent savings, are they doing internal lending, group activity. If everything is okay, then we will now give the microfinance institution the funds at no interest to on-lend, to those groups. And we are very strict on that. We watch them every step they take. Any deviation or diversion of the funds, we report them to their apexes. They normally have apexes, regulatory authorities, and they get sanctioned, immediately. Though we haven't had any instance of any default of such, So far I can say that is the strategy we adopt, and that's the mode of operations.
Okay.
Thank you.
I wanted to say, so one of the success story is you lend, or the VSLAs lend from the microfinance at no default. They return the money without any form of default?
Oh yeah, since when we started, I can tell you that we don't have any experience of any default.
So I think there's a success story.
101% repayment. And the good thing is, as repayments are being made by the original borrowers, additional money is being put into the funds for other people also, to borrow. So it's going on and on and on. So if we can get, people like you and, to come and put additional funds in it within no time, yes, we can cover the whole of the state or even the federation at large. So that's how it works.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Faisal. Let me just come to this side. Do we have any question, any comment you want to make quick? I understand we are running out of time, so please, 1, 2, 3. Care staff, I will not, unless you want to add something, I'm not going to recognize. Please give it to her, then the next person.
Okay, and then the Mr. behind.
Yes, I'll come to you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Crystal. I am the Executive Director of Center for Family Health Initiative. In collaboration to what she said, we've had several testimonies because we are currently partnering with the Institute of Human Virology, IHVN, to carry out OVC projects here in FCT, and we are covering several communities. We have over 20 VSLA groups, and we have both male and female members. Then in terms of means of supporting or injecting the funds, like she rightly pointed out, we do that, the NGOs do that. We do an assessment and identify the vulnerable households, you know, and most of them are HIV affected or infected, you know, households or individuals that really need support. We either do cash transfer or what we call IGA, income generating activities, you know, set them up and now encourage them to be part of this VSLA groups in order to save and grow their businesses and also have an opportunity to, you know, provide certain basic needs for their households. So VSLA groups is something that have, like you rightly pointed out, adequately supported individuals, households, and the community at large. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for the wonderful presentation. My name is Dr. Aminat. I'm a lecturer in Lagos. So, I've also been in the microfinance sector for over a decade before moving to academics. So I understand the issue of high interest rates because I am in the credit department. So we do some of these group loans too, the village savings groups. But I'm interested in what CARE does because number one, it gives them an avenue for an interest-free loans. And then, but I want to ask that how as their psychosocial support strategies, how do CARE come in? Because most people, especially in Lagos, most women, they have multiple loans they run at the same time. So that is where it comes from, where they save into your group. They have loans with majority of microfinance banks in Lagos, and then that is why we most times experience high default. So in terms of the sustainability of these groups, once there is a default within the group, how is it managed? Then expansion, I see that it's about 25 women in the group, members. Then at what point do they now split, and what are the procedures for splitting? Do they split? And then what is the transition into getting advanced loan in the microfinance sector? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just take one more on this side. Okay, John, and I will take him. We are being hurried out of the place. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you so much. My name is Dr. Ehon. I work for Diadem, managing one of the projects for World Bank. When my big boss was speaking, I was highly elated and impressed. Few questions for answers. One, how much have you spent so far in running the VSLA component in Bauchi State as a learning curve and model? Two, what was the proportion of poverty in Bauchi for women before you started intervening? We need to know. Three, that's why I said few questions begging.
He may not be able to answer all. One of them we will send it to the National Bureau of Statistics.
Yes.
And then where he answer the first one. That's fine.
You dwell so much on the input. You dwell so much, because that is the food I eat, so I deal on data. You dwell so much on the input component without looking at the output and the outcome. In your VSLA, I know you are not directly intervening. What are those components of their work they do? Is it the farming, or the off-farm, or the on-farm?
Thank you. Next one. Oh my God.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Damian Fanning. I work with National Commission for Persons with Disability. Thank you, panelists and the speakers, for this. I appreciate your contribution and So since sat here, I've been expecting to hear persons with disability being mentioned. How far have you carried persons with disability in the areas of VSLA? What is the, because our situation today or our society today thinks persons with disability are limited to begging, but we are not. We have people who are working as civil servants just like I am. So we need this type of saving mentality that you are advocating and sensitizing the society on. So how long have you involved persons with disability?
Thank you.
And what are the statistics around
Thank you
it?
very much. So I'll come to the panelists. Faiza, can you respond very
Okay.
quickly? But again, I think because there are other people here,
Yeah.
is this VSLA an end in itself
No.
or a means to an end?
Exactly.
And I ask this in relations to this fact that there are other things that you can achieve with the group beyond the financial inclusion side.
Yeah.
So can you just speak to that very briefly and answer some of the
So,
questions being asked?
and all that. So the VSLA also covers a lot of things. I can't start mentioning them, but I'm telling you, is an entry for multiple projects, and it reduces multidimensional poverty.
Thank you,
can say
Faiza.
that,
Alec
yeah.
Nura. You want to respond to, forget about the National Bureau of Statistics question, and just answer about your agency and leave the order to the World Bank and the MBS.
Because I actually thought I was here defending a PhD. Yes, actually, I don't have those figures right here, but I know poverty was on rise, definitely. You know, COVID-19 as at that time, inflation, economic recession and all that. It's everywhere, it's a global thing, and the statistics are there, but I don't have them right
Even between yesterday and today, poverty has increased.
Exactly. You know, so,
With the action that was taken just yesterday.
so that was the justification for that. The second question.
I think he asked, how much have the state government invested so far?
Oh, okay. Yeah, again, I don't have those figures as well, but I know, it's the revolving fund. It's just going on as money is being paid back, others are still borrowing. So the beauty of it is that with little money, you can touch the lives of so many people. It's not a thing that you would invest a lot of money into, no. Revolving fund, little money, large impact.
Bauchi has an excellent model, and that's why we brought them here as one of the agencies to interface with. And I know you are doing quite a number of work with the World Bank. You can also, on bilateral basis, access, if it's a model you want to understand how a state government is supporting microfinance and all that, that may be something you can have on a bilateral basis. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I actually want to thank you so much for your time. We haven't done 1 hour. Faiza, you have something, Bonnie, you want to say?
Yes.
I can see you looking very on ease. And so
I just feel like there is a lot to say because you asked a question about are we going to leave the VSLA savings? But I was trying to complete that question. We are trying to move beyond the box, and we are also engaging government. One, the issue of regulation. They'll say, "Oh, VSLA is an informal, blah blah blah." They don't have the government recognition. We are also working with central bank to capture the savings group or the VSLA under the National Financial Inclusion Strategy because we identify it as a gap. You have, when you say financial inclusion, you have the formal other bank and informal, but when you go to the NFIS, you find none of the informal. So this is something we are also working to advocate. That's part of our Beyond the Box strategy. We're also working with government agencies like Alaj Nura to adopt the VSLA. When something is good, you are eager to tell other people to adopt it or to scale it up. So we're working with other government organizations like the National Cash Limit, the cash transfer only. So this is basically also things we are looking at and a lot more. Maybe we can have a bilateral.
Alaj Nura has something pressing to say. Yeah.
I'm just going to comment quickly about the linkages of VSLAs to financial institutions. Yeah. I want to linking of the VSLAs to commercial bank is not trade with the money, but they do not give them commensurate support. In fact, they are supposed to be lending to them at very low interest rates, and giving them other support. Yeah. But they are not doing that at the moment. Exactly. So that is something.
It's a big challenge. In some of our countries, I think our program in Ivory Coast were able to transit and put up their VSLA group to form a microfinance bank. Yeah, and that was massive, and it's what another model that others are actually considering on how the VSLA group can actually summon the power and the energy, get the support, and set up some of those institutions. And then yes.
What about bringing them into federations?
Yes.
Yeah, no, the
Federation,
federation
that
is
is
one
the
of the
point,
key
yeah.
things. So you have different groups and you bring them into federations. That's that's the starting point actually, so that they don't just feel that they are just alone in their respective groups, that they are part of a larger body of people who are working around these issues. And then Faiza, there was a big question around
please,
inclusion.
for the
disability.
persons with disability, you know, when I start discussing the VSLA, one of the first factor we consider is self-selected, and we are not excluding any.
If we don't have that principal guidance, one of the things to do is to set up that as part of the guidance that we give to this group in terms of the self-selection process, that they can be deliberate, I think, and very intentional in actually mobilizing and cultivating people with disability. Otherwise, in the course of this deepening inclusion, we will strengthen exclusion, particularly of people with disability.
Thank you very much, Dr. Osenia, and thank you very much for your comment. We are going to take that into cognizance and add it to our guidelines. I think it's also something we're missing. So I think I'm going home today with 2 key major takeaways for myself. Yeah.
Thank you very much, colleagues. And I'm sorry, I can see a lot of hands up there. We are not able to take more comment because the next session is starting very soon. But we thank you for your time. Thanks for your passionate contributions and your commitment to financial inclusion and women's economic empowerment. That is the directions. Anyone who talks about reducing or eradicating poverty and you don't face the challenge of exclusion and women's economic empowerment, you haven't started. And for us, the VSLA is one mechanism that we can use, 1, to strengthen financial inclusion, 2, to ensure women's economic empowerment, and also be able to reach women with other services that really borders their life, particularly when it comes to health services, education, water, nutrition, and all that. And every one of us here, particularly those of us working in the sector, knew that this is one of the most interesting entry space for this kind of interventions. Yeah. Thank you very much for your time, and all the best in the rest of the session.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, Dr. Sida, we should have a group picture.
Okay, we should have it.
Yeah.